This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Always good to have him with us. John, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me to be. Always a pleasure.
We've got a lot of poll numbers that we get to run through today. So let's begin with our latest Talk Business and Politics-Hendrix College poll. When you look at the presidential matchup in Arkansas, former President Donald Trump, 55%, Vice President Kamala Harris, 40%. That is a healthy 15-point lead with weeks to go for Donald Trump to stretch his lead out or Kamala Harris to close the gap. What's your take?
First of all, it is a factor, I think, that maybe a minor one, that the poll was conducted before the debate. And the debate has shown a little movement nationally toward Harris, away from Trump. And if there might have been some modest morsel of evidence of that or incidents of that, even in Arkansas. So with that said, 55-40, I put on social media a great victory for Arkansas Democrats, only down by 15. People thought I was either being sarcastic or I was saying there's something happening out here. I think I was doing both. I mean, 55-40 is better than Democrats could have expected to do, but it's still kind of sarcastic that amounts to good news for Democrats. I wrote something down. I want to put it this way, and I want to make sure I say it right. And you're the numbers guy. You can tell me if I got this right. Harris, in your poll, gets Biden's 38% positive rating, +2. Trump, in your poll, gets Biden's 61% negative rating, -6. In other words, she's outdoing Biden's negative. Trump can't get all of the Biden negative, even in Arkansas. Now, this does not mean anything seismic is happening in Arkansas, but I think it shows that she's a better candidate, obviously, than Biden would have been, and that Trump is not as strong as he historically has been in Arkansas. He's still strong, but there is some residual damage to him lately for his less than stellar performance on the stump. And I think, if anything, that probably could have worsened, even in Arkansas, after the debate. And Democrats in Arkansas, I've fallen for Democratic positive thinking before, and I'm not going to do it again, but they're saying we want to get to 25% +1 of the houses of the legislature so we could have more leverage and block some appropriations and then have some leverage. And we think it can be done in the current climate, particularly in Democratic areas like some areas of Northwest Arkansas, the Delta, Central Arkansas. I'm not going to fall for that. I'm not going to think that's going to happen. I'm just telling you, right now, I think Democrats are a little bit less anemic. Let's put it that way, a little bit less anemic in Arkansas than they have been in the last couple of cycles, which is very anemic. That's the way I would do it.
You're telling me you're not falling for the old Lucy and Charlie Brown football gimmick again?
I have listened to Democrats give me some happy talk, and it's never so. But it's like somebody's down in the Murfreesboro diamond mine, and they found this grain of sand, and they're thinking, is this kind of a diamond? It's probably not, but that's sort of what the morsel of evidence I'm talking about that might be there. It is true that Harris gets a few positive respondents in your poll from people who are negative toward Biden, and that Trump gets fewer positive responses than Biden's negative. So that tells you, while he's still a powerful force in Arkansas, he's down a little and she's up a little. I think that's all that means.
I think that's reflective of what we've seen nationally and what we've seen in some other states polling as well too. So,
yep.
You referenced the Joe Biden 38% approval, 61% job disapproval in Arkansas. Governor Sarah Sanders, 50% approve, 43% job disapproval for her, about 7% undecided. That is actually a higher number for her than in the Arkansas poll and in some other polls that have been released within the state of Arkansas that haven't had as much profile. What do you take away from those numbers?
I believe Sarah has, by design, changed the polling popularity paradigm for the Arkansas governorship. I think that, we were accustomed to BB polling her own father, Mike Huckabee, then BB, then Asa Hutchinson. These guys, they polled, their positives were high 50s, 60s, maybe even mid 60s at times. They were consensus oriented in their policies, in their behavior, in their image. In two of the case, in BB's case, he was only wanting to be governor. Governor was all he ever wanted to be, and that was the full context. In Asa's, it was, I need to be pragmatic. This is a transitional phase in Arkansas, and we need to limit the destructive decisiveness, particularly trying to get through the pandemic. So he governed in a more pragmatic way. And that's what we got accustomed to in our governors, and we liked them. Even as the state was going Republican legislatively, BB carried all 75 counties one time. So that's, I believe that's an accurate statement. 2010, 12, one of those. So that was the paradigm. Governors are different. Governors are our local student council presidents, and we like them. Sarah, on the other hand, is a national politician, nationally focused. She is playing for the national MAGA ideology. It is what gave rise to her. It is what she depends on. It is where she focuses. And she builds into that she's going to be a more divisive, a more polarizing figure. And when she does that by design, and she's still 50 to 43, it's working for her. You don't have to win big, as big as Asa or BB won. You just have to win to stay in office. So she has the last element of Arkansas politics that was not nationalized was the governorship, and she's taken care of that. So I think that's all that is, and I think she looks at 50% and 43 and said, "Hey, I haven't spent any money to rehab myself. Great, it's working. I'm a successful national arena player, and I'm doing all right here in Arkansas. I don't need to be stratospheric in my positive ratings. I just need to be reelectable." That's the way I read that.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out for viewers and listeners and readers as well, these are job approval numbers, not re-election numbers. Would you vote?
Right. Yeah.
That. And
well, I didn't mean to say they were.
No.
Yeah.
I agree. I just want to get that out. I do want to note too, when you talk about BB and Hutchinson, BB, a Democrat, had close to 50% Republican support in his job approval numbers, and Asa Hutchinson at times did have 50% job approval numbers among Democrats, even though he was Republican. And you do not see those numbers for governor.
That's she knows that. That's the way she's playing it, and it's as I say, a new popularity paradigm for Arkansas governors, and she's done it. She's a change figure in Arkansas politics, no doubt.
Let's talk about a couple of the ballot issues. I'm going to skip over issue 1, the lottery amendment. It's on a roll, 86% for. I think that one's a given at this point. Issue 2 is the Polk County casino amendment. Got a couple of complicated parts in there. Seems to have a little bit of support at this point in time. Lots of money is going to get spent on this. 42% for, 28% against, 30 undecided. Do you still see that potential ballot issue, if it stays on the ballot, as a coin toss, or do you think that from what you're seeing in this baseline poll, the other side, the opposition to it's going to have to kick it into higher gear?
The opposition is going to have to kick it into higher gear. 42-28 is not prohibitive, but it's significant. and the pro forces have what ought to be a rhetorical advantage. They're about local control. The rest of you people in the state can't tell us in our local county, as in Pope County, or should it happen anywhere else, whether you're going to put a casino in here or whether some rich folks are going to come in here and do a casino without our saying we want it. I think that's a winner generally, absent the moneyed interests in favor of the casino design a message, and they're going to spend a lot of money and kick it into high gear, and it has to be smart and successful, because I think at its foundation, the local control wins, ought to. Yeah. You just can, if you just say, would you like some big money guys to get the state to vote to put a casino next to where you live? No. Or maybe you would, but you ought to get to say. I think that's a prevailing argument, absent some major muddying of the water or redefinition of that money and smart operatives might be able to design.
Yeah, I agree with you. Issue 3 is the Arkansas, I call it the Medical Marijuana Expansion Amendment. There's a lot of different moving parts in this one. We outlined that in the question and to potential voters here in terms of what it all does. At the end of the day, it's a 54% in favor of expanding this medical marijuana amendment, 35.5% opposed, just 10.5% undecided. I view this as really more a referendum on, yeah, we're still in favor of medical marijuana. I don't really know if the details matter as much to people.
I think that's right. I think Arkansas is generally, like the world, pro-weed. I just think that's where we are. I think recreational would have won last time, but for the factor of greed. The current licensees to be dispensaries wanting to control that market as well, and that word got out. But your polls and others early, before that became an issue, showed support, as I recall, for recreational. This is an expansion of medical, and as long as it's looked at generally as that, it will pass. I've already heard from some of the anti-marijuana forces that this is basically the same people who will benefit, the same entrenched people in the medical marijuana industry who are building into, with this amendment, their own monopoly over this expanded opportunity to get these prescriptions. We may hear something about that, but basically, letting the nurse practitioner, who you probably see for your wellness check anyway, have the authority to prescribe, or pharmacist, letting you grow a little of your own with a license. I mean, that's not really all that controversial anymore. Remarkable. Been a major cultural shift, which took a lot of time on this issue. Certainly medically, I think recreationally as well, but that's how I read that one.
All right, that medical marijuana amendment also under some litigation at the Arkansas Supreme Court. Yeah. I've seen no one. We'll see if they
everything is. Yeah.
Last question for you. Speaking of the Supreme Court, we did test the Chief Justice race in here. 70% undecided. Not usual for these Supreme Court races. I've looked back at many of them that we've polled over the years. There's always a 70%, sometimes even larger, undecided in here. 19% for Supreme Court Justice Karen Baker for Chief Justice, 11% for Supreme Court Justice Rhonda Wood. Somehow someone's going to make a decision in this race. That 70% undecided's got to vote eventually. Well, how do you see it playing out?
Robbie, we've had two elections, a primary and a general election, in which Karen Baker, who is the least visible member of the Arkansas Supreme Court, and who in both instances did not campaign, did not spend money, maybe did a couple of forums and did nothing else, led the ticket, won and led the ticket. The name Karen Baker is somehow magic. In this case, she's not campaigning. Rhonda Wood, Associate Justice, is her opponent, is out there doing all of the political events. She can't talk about issues, but she's out there talking about the administrative issues affecting the court and things she's got in mind, having what I thought was a high public profile, and yet 80% got no view of this race, and of those who do, no, 1911, 70% have no view, and of those who do, they prefer invisible Karen Baker to the hyperactive Rhonda Wood. Every Supreme Court, every time we have a Supreme Court election, I scratch my head and wonder. And I'm going to say it is not good. There is nothing in this state more important than the Arkansas Supreme Court just ask these people who got out and worked their tails off to get an abortion rights amendment on the ballot, and it got thrown out by 4 members of the Supreme Court in a 4-3 vote that has been nationally trashed as bogus, contrived reasoning. That's the thing that affects you more than anything else, probably, is the Supreme Court of the state. And you don't know who the justices are, and nobody seems to much care. But let me just close with this. I don't have a better way to do it. I don't have a better way to do it than elect them ostensibly nonpartisanly, even though they're actually partisan. Do we want to do it the way the federal government does it, with the chief executive making the nominations and the Senate confirming? How's that going in terms of the court and appearing to protect the rule of law objectively without the appearance of politics? Not very well. So it's what is it? It's just something that's odd that I'm going to have to get used to, that I need to quit wringing my hands over, because it's the way, there's not a good way to do it, and the way we do it always leaves me perplexed. How's that?
On a note of perplexion here at the end of this conversation.
Or perplexity. I don't know, perplexity.
Not sure what the appropriate noun is, right. But this is our baseline poll. We'll do one more before Election Day. We'll see if the numbers move any on some of these issues, and obviously see if some of the ballot issues remain on the ballot for people to vote on. He is John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. It's always good to get his viewpoint. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks for asking. Good to talk to you. Bye-bye.